Hello everyone and welcome to the Premier League Match Week 3 preview. This is the final one we'll do before we take a short break because the international games are coming up, so there'll be a couple of international games over a couple of weeks break. But the Formula 1 is coming back as well this weekend, so we'll start talking a little bit more about that whilst the football's off. We have had some Carabao Cup action midweek. Since I've done the review for the Week 2 games, we've had on the Tuesday and the Wednesday night, we've had the Carabao Cup games. There's been some very interesting results there. Probably the most notable is Man United getting knocked out of League 2 Grimsby. So that's a fantastic result for the Mariners. I think it's probably one of the games that you'll always remember. A giant killing game. So fantastic performance all round from Grimsby. I watched the match. I thought they were brilliant. And yeah, I think there's maybe more problems at Man United than I thought there was going to be going into the season. But yeah, we've got a slightly different structure for the video. There's no Friday and there's no Monday game as there has been for the first 2 weeks of the season. So all the games are on the Saturday and the Sunday. There's one obviously at 7 o'clock on the Sunday night, and obviously we've got the 12:30 on the Saturday. So we'll dive straight into the video and we'll go through the first prediction, which is the 12:30 kickoff on the Saturday. So the 12:30 kickoff on the Saturday is the West London derby between Chelsea and Fulham. It's being played at Stamford Bridge, and I think Chelsea are slight favourites, probably going into the game after their amazing result last weekend, a 5-1 win away at West Ham's London Stadium. And then you've got Fulham, who's come in and they've just been steady and consistent at the start of the season. They've picked up 2 points from 2 games. They drew away at Brighton and then they drew at home to Manchester United as well, in a game where they actually looked stronger towards the end of the game. And as soon as they got that equalising goal, I think if any team was going to nick it later on, I think it would have been Fulham. I do think it's a very evenly matched game, and these games are normally close. Like I say, it's a derby, so there's going to be lots of tension, there's lots at stake. You want to get pride over your neighbours, so I think there's lots at stake for this game. I think realistically I can see a draw in this game, but just based on Chelsea's attacking talent last week that I watched them against West Ham, and seeing the likes of Joao Pedro Neto, all without Cole Palmer and the team they were all firing at Steve-O, with a fantastic performance at such a young age to come in on your first Premier League start and to perform like that, it was quite frightening. So I'll go with a Chelsea win. But like I say, Fulham have had a fantastic start. They've just been so steady and consistent, and I believe that you'll have a good season. Fulham, I think he's doing really well. You haven't actually brought that many players in. You've just kept the core of the squad together, and that's probably the most important thing for somebody like Fulham, to keep the core of that squad, to not really necessarily let any of your big players go. I mean, Smith Rowe with a fantastic goal. He was on the pitch for no more than 2 minutes against Man United. And then you've got the likes of Raul Jimenez and Rodrigo Muniz, who you can rotate. There's squad depth there, so you don't necessarily need to bring players in. I know Marco Silva's obviously vented his frustration about the lack of activity in the transfer market, but I think he's doing a phenomenal job just keeping the players ticking over and obviously grabbing results as and where you can get them. I think Fulham actually have quite a fairly impressive record against Chelsea in the last few seasons. Obviously Chelsea went through a blip of not performing at the level that they should be, and Fulham picked up a few wins when they played each other during that time period. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. So now you've got Chelsea are firing, Fulham are consistent as they've always been. It can go either way, but I'm going to just slightly edge it in Chelsea's favour. Okay, now we're on to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and the first one is Wolverhampton Wanderers hosting Everton at Molineux. Wolves had a disappointing opening game at Molineux. They got beat 4-0 off Manchester City. This game is a little bit more open for them, I think. There's a chance that they can get something from this game. Everton picked up a really good win at home at their brand new stadium. The first game was a 2-0 win against Brighton, and they bounced back from a defeat. Wolves failed to bounce back from their defeat on the opening day, and they did then fall to a second defeat in a row against Bournemouth last week. So Wolves are still awaiting their first point in this season. Everton picked up their first 3 points, and I think this game is setting itself up to be a draw. Wolves picked up a really good win in midweek. They beat West Ham in the Carabao Cup. Jorgen Strand-Larsen had come off the bench and picked up 2 goals for them. They were 2-1 down, and then he turned it round and they won 3-2. So that sent them through to the next round of the Cup. There is still rumours about Strand-Larsen potentially moving away. Them rumours are picking up this week. Obviously, we're into the final few days of the transfer window, so the business from clubs, if they still need to do it, they'll be getting the business done quickly or as quick as possible to prevent anything going wrong near the deadline. So yeah, I think Wolves are adamant that they want to keep a hold of Strand-Larsen. You can totally see why. He's the focal point of that team. Everything they create, he's there to put it away. And like I say, it was 2 goals in 2 minutes for him against West Ham. So that's very clinical, and obviously that helped Wolves get through to the next round. If they didn't have a Jorgen Strand-Larsen, then probably would have been West Ham that had went through and Wolves would be out. So yeah, I think things to think about for Wolves, because it is a lot of money that's being put on the table. But I think they would argue and say that his quality in in their team is more important than the £60 million that it may take to try and lure him away from the club. As for Everton, I think they've pretty much got all of their business done early doors. They beat Mansfield 2-0 last night in the Carabao Cup. So that was a comfortable win for them. I would have expected that. And with Everton going through to the next round with Wolves, they drew each other in the next round, the third round of the Carabao Cup. It will be played at Molineux. So we can get to see what that will probably look like from this game. And like I say, I'm going with a draw for this. I just think it's going to be very tight, and I think so. The first game for Everton, they really struggled to create chances against Leeds, and then they were fantastic against Brighton. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that it was the first game in the new stadium, and the atmosphere was fantastic. The Everton fans were really up for that game, and everything that could go their way went their way. Obviously, Jordan Pickford saved the penalty as well. They kept a clean sheet. They won 2-0. Grealish with 2 assists. It was a fantastic day all round for Everton. And then I think when you've got obviously with Wolves, they were still creating chances against Man City. Obviously, the Bournemouth one seemed to be quite a low-scoring game with not many chances. But then I watched them against West Ham, and they played really well. And like I said, Strand-Larsen was involved. As soon as he come on, he changed the game. And the system looked to work for Wolves in that game. And again, obviously, maybe that West Ham were just tiring towards the end of the game. But I think Wolves are a good enough team to be away from the relegation fight this season. I fully believe that Vitor Pereira is a good manager. He come in last season and he worked miracles at Wolves, and I didn't think that Cunha would have that much of an effect leaving them, because I thought that there was some games last season, especially towards the end of the year, where Vitor Pereira was preparing for him to be going, and he was obviously leaving him out of the squad, and Wolves were still picking up results. He's got the quality there. He's got the quality within his squad to get the results required. I do think that Everton will be on a high coming off the back of that result. If they go with Jack Grealish in the start 11 again, I think he'd be well up to continue the start of the season that he's had. So I do think it's going to be a tight game, and I just think these two teams will cancel each other out. So I'll go with a draw between them. So the next 3 o'clock kickoff is Tottenham hosting Bournemouth at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. These two teams picked up a win last week. Bournemouth picked up their first of the season after losing to Liverpool on the opening day, and Tottenham continued their winning start of the season. 2 wins from 2. They beat Manchester City away from home at the Etihad Stadium. So it's been a fantastic start of the season for Tottenham. I don't think anyone can argue with that. I think Thomas Frank has been sensational coming in and developing his system straight into the players, asking them what he wants them to do, and they have fully bought into his project. And I think Daniel Levy will be a very happy man that it seems to be working at the moment, after he made the bold decision to get rid of Ange Postecoglou, who did win Spurs the Europa League last season. And like I say, I think a lot of fans were shocked that he was sacked. Not obviously the league form wasn't quite there, but I think winning the Europa League and getting that team into the Champions League was a fantastic achievement, beating Manchester United in the final. And yeah, I just think it caught everyone a little bit off guard. But like I say, I think Daniel Levy will be the happiest man in the building because it seems like it's paid off for him. And Thomas Frank, although it's only been 2 games, he's come in straight away and he's really had an impact on this Spurs side with the signings that they've brought in and also the players who were already there as well. So what you've got there is that obviously Bournemouth are typically or normally a very good counter-attacking side. They don't mind an away game against somebody like a Tottenham. And I think this could be a game where Thomas Frank maybe gets a little taste of his own medicine because he won't. The game against Manchester City last week was so open for him, and he played his counter-attacking style, and it really worked. The week before was Burnley, and that was a slightly different game where obviously he had to try and break Burnley down, but he managed to do it, and they got the 3 points as well. Spurs look really good defensively. They haven't conceded a goal this season. I do believe they will concede in this game. I don't know. It's hard to go against them winning at the moment because they're on such fine form. But then I think to myself, well, I watched Bournemouth as well against Liverpool, and I thought they played really well against the champions from last season. Potentially swayed to go with a draw in this game. Bournemouth's attack, I always love Bournemouth's attack, as I've mentioned last week and probably the week before. Semenyo, Evan Nilsson, they have goals in them all across the pitch. Obviously, they've got Alex Scott in the midfield as well, he's a fantastic player. Tottenham have obviously got Kudus. I don't think he'll drop Richarlison. I think Solanke is back now, but I think Richarlison started the season in fantastic form. Obviously, you've got Brennan Johnson in there as well. So they all performed fantastically last week against Manchester City. I'm going to go with the Tottenham win. I think it's silly to predict against Tottenham at the moment. They're on fine form, and I think they're going to continue that on. I think Bournemouth will give it a good go. Like I said, I do think they'll get a goal. But I just think Tottenham will have a little bit too much for them. Okay, and the next 3 o'clock kickoff is Manchester United hosting Burnley at Old Trafford. As we mentioned before, Manchester United did fall to the defeat in the Carabao Cup on penalties to Grimsby. Congratulations, Mariners. Honestly, I was watching the game again, and I just thought that I was slightly disappointed from Manchester United point of view. They went 2-0 down, and by the way, that was Grimsby was playing really well. They played fantastic football, and Man United were just having an off day as well. So you combine the two together, and it was fantastic for Grimsby fans, especially anyone that was there. And then obviously what you've got is they haven't won a game at the start of this season, so that was an opportunity to get through to the next round of the cup and then see who you draw and potentially spark a cup run, and that can have an effect on the league performance as well. It can give you confidence, the fact that you're winning games in the cup, you can win games in the league. And the next game for Man United after the Grimsby one is Burnley at home, which theoretically, looking at it, and obviously on paper as a favourite, Man United should have enough quality in their squad to beat that Burnley team at home. But coming off the back of that penalty shootout against Grimsby, and it was just grueling. Amorim couldn't watch the penalties. Honestly, I don't even know if he watched any of the second half. It was really disappointing to see, because, like I say, I've obviously mentioned a couple of times on this channel that I didn't think Man United would have the same season this year as they did last season. They have less competitions to focus on, even more so now that they've knocked out the League Cup. And I thought that they would kick on. The signings that they've made, they didn't have enough goals in their team. And yet it still feels like they're relying on a late surge from Harry Maguire to get them back into the game. I mean, he equalised the game yesterday in the 89th minute for them, and that can't continue. Harry Maguire isn't a goal scorer. Yes, he can pop up in the moments when you need him to, but he can't keep that up for Manchester United, and there's got to be serious work put into this team. Not in regards to the transfers, in regards to how they're setting up the system, because I was just getting used to seeing Amorim's system. But then the results come out, and you draw into Fulham. They could have won that game as well. They had more chances in the first half. They missed a penalty. So I do think there's a little bit of unluckiness that comes into the Premier League games. They were by far the better team against Arsenal. So the two performances in the Premier League have been amazing. And then obviously rotates the team against Grimsby, and it just didn't work. And so I don't know. I'm not too sure on where we stand with Amorim or with Manchester United at the moment. If you've listened to his post-match interview after the game, it doesn't sound very good at all. And like I say, the attitude in that second half, he couldn't watch the penalties, he couldn't watch a lot of the second half. Whether that was anger or I don't know, it come across a little bit rude, to be honest. That team's playing, it's your team, you've got to stick by them. So I think that was a little bit disappointing as well. But obviously, he's got to figure that out for himself. And Burnley's up next. Burnley got a fantastic win against Sunderland last week, and I think they could be on a high. And judging by the performance, obviously from Manchester United against Grimsby, I think their tails could be down. They desperately need a win, but I'm gonna go with a Burnley draw. I think Burnley can easily get a draw in this game. I just think, unfortunately for Man United, until we can see that you've got a win on the board, it's very hard to say where that's going to come from. This should be, obviously, like I say, one of the games that you'll be looking at and you'll be 100% expecting to get the 3 points. But honestly, Burnley's got a really nice team. They've got obviously Kyle Walker in there with experience. They've got Martin Dubravka in there with experience. And I think the experience showed last week against Sunderland. They held out for that clean sheet. As much as Sunderland had a couple of chances, they didn't really threaten too much. And so, therefore, Burnley obviously were in control for a lot of the game. Josh Cullen with a fantastic goal. Jaden Anthony on the counter attack as well. So Burnley have their system set up. Scott Parker is going to be desperate to survive relegation this season. He's already had a couple of attempts, and it hasn't worked out for him. So obviously, if he's already picked up his first 3 points, and he can try and get another 3 points here at Manchester United, I don't think Burnley will have enough to win. But I definitely think they can cause problems for Man United, and I definitely think they can get at least a point on the board. Okay then, and the final 3 o'clock kickoff is Sunderland hosting Brentford at the Stadium of Light. Sunderland start the season with 1 win, 1 defeat. Brentford start the season with 1 win, 1 defeat. So these two teams are as evenly matched as you can get. I think Brentford's win last week against Villa was one of the shock results of the weekend. I didn't see that one coming at all, and obviously Keith Andrews gets his first win as a manager at Brentford. They managed to keep a clean sheet. So things are looking on the up now for Brentford. After the first week, they got heavily beat 3-1 by Nottingham Forest. And I know Nottingham Forest are a good side, but I think for your first game, you just want to try and keep it tight, and that was a bad example of how to attack the first game of the season. As for Sunderland, it's been a complete contrast for them. They won their first game, they won 3-0 against West Ham, and then they got beat 2-0 away at Burnley last weekend. So for this game, you've got Brentford, an established Premier League side who have obviously had a massive overhaul in the summer. And as for Sunderland, you've got a new up-and-coming team who's trying to make their mark on the Premier League, trying to be the first promoted team to survive relegation, like Burnley, like Leeds, who are all giving it a good go. And they've had a massive overhaul as well in the summer, so they've spent a lot to improve their side. I think what you're going to get with this game is it's going to be very tight again. But I think maybe the home form of Sunderland could have a massive impact, and I am going to go with a Sunderland win. Again, a draw is entirely possible in this game. Sorry about that. A draw is entirely possible in this game, but I'm not going to go into it and predict draws for every single game, as much as they could be tight. And I got a lot of draws right last weekend, or I was very close to getting them right. I'm going to go with the Sunderland win. I just think the home atmosphere will be good again for this one, and they'll want to bounce back from that poor performance against Burnley. They know that they're better than that, so yeah, this will be a bit like the West Ham game for them. It's like a team that's going to be in and around that zone for me, the relegation zone. So to get a win over one of them teams sets a massive advantage for you in regards to the relegation battle. So yeah, I'll go with the Sunderland win for that one. Okay then, and then we've got the 5:30 kickoff on the Saturday, which is Leeds United hosting Newcastle at Elland Road. And Leeds picked up their first win at Elland Road, which was against Everton, and then they fell to a defeat away at Arsenal last weekend, 5-0, which was a heavy defeat. But obviously that's what can happen when you go to these big sides, and you go to the Emirates. That's exactly what Arsenal can do. They've got Gyökeres in, they've got a striker that can convert chances all day long. As for Newcastle, they are still winless. They picked up a draw away at Aston Villa, and they lost in the 100th minute at home to Liverpool in their first home game of the season. So this one's interesting. Again, I think the promoted sides are going to have to make the home advantage count. So Leeds will be looking at this game, and they may be looking at Newcastle, who are maybe licking their wounds a little bit after that Liverpool game. Anthony Gordon will be suspended for this game, so Newcastle will have to potentially go with William Asula, I believe, up front, who did get a goal, the equalising goal against Liverpool to make it 2-2. But I think Leeds will be looking at that, and they'll be saying, well, I don't know where the goals are going to come from. So they can take advantage of that 100% of the way. They've obviously got then Tonali and Joe Linton, who went off injured for Newcastle as well. The rumours are doing the rounds that their injuries are not as bad as what first suspected, so maybe they may be back after the international break, but I don't know if they'll be available for this game specifically. So again, that's Newcastle's midfield and attack that's weakened. And then obviously you've got the defence as well. Fabian Shaw went off with concussion, and Malik Thiaw did make his first Premier League game, his debut, so I was really impressed with Malik Thiaw as well. I thought he had a very good game. In the final 10 minutes, that he looked calm, composed. So maybe Malik Thiaw does come in to the starting 11 for this game if Fabian Shaw's out. But Newcastle's core is simply being ripped apart. So they don't have a striker, they don't have a recognised number 8, they don't have a recognised centre back. In Fabian Shaw, Tonali, and Anthony Gordon, and obviously Alexander Isak we still don't know where we stand on that one. But yeah, I think there's opportunities that Newcastle could get exposed in this game, and I think with Leeds being at home, with it being the 5:30 kick-off, I think Ellen Road's going to be bouncing again like it was for Everton, and I can 100% see Leeds United getting a result in this game. I don't know if I can see Leeds winning, but I can see Leeds at least getting a draw, and with Newcastle desperate to get their first win of the season, I think that desperation is going to start settling in soon. So I do believe that this game is going to end in a draw. I think Leeds have got a fantastic attack as well, so I can't see Leeds getting a couple of goals. The question is whether Newcastle can keep up conceding a couple of goals a game and scoring a couple, because as we've seen against Villa, they didn't score at all. And then Liverpool, they looked like they were creating chances all across the pitch, and they managed to put 2 of them away. But I think they rued missing the chances that they had in the first half when they were on top and the game was 0-0. They had a lot of chances to put away and they couldn't do it. So yeah, I'm going to go with a draw on this one. I think Leeds will get another point on the board, and I think the promoted sides are doing really well this season. I was really impressed with Leeds against Arsenal for that opening half an hour. I think they've been the most impressive promoted side to come up so far. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they could get a draw from this game. So the 2 o'clock games is Brighton hosting Manchester City at the Amex Stadium, and the second one is Nottingham Forest hosting West Ham at the City Ground. So as for Brighton Manchester City, I think this game's really going to be close. Brighton have yet to really kick on at the start of this season. They could have and probably should have beat Fulham on the opening game if it wasn't for that late equaliser, and then they fell to a defeat away at Everton. Like I say, everything that could go Everton's way did go Everton's way, and Brighton, in fairness to them, still created. They still looked really good, but they just couldn't convert any of the chances. I think we would have been looking at a completely different game had that penalty have been converted, and I think Brighton maybe pushed on and maybe got an equaliser later on, but they've come away with 1 point from 2 games. And then obviously Manchester City, well, they looked fantastic away at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and then they looked not poor, but they didn't look as good, and they were really sort of dominated by Spurs. Spurs' tactics going into that game worked a treat on Pep Guardiola, and Thomas Frank definitely had his number. So I think that was a valuation of that game, but this is completely different. The game's going to be wide open. Brighton love to play an attacking style of football. Manchester City at the moment look like they can transition really well, especially if they get the likes of Rodri and Foden into the starting 11. I know Foden had a poor year last season, but he will 100% be looking to bounce back this season. I think it's a difficult one to call. I do think I'm going to go with a Manchester City win. I just can't see Manchester City losing back-to-back games. I think I've predicted them to be up there for the title this season, as I did with Arsenal and Liverpool. So obviously Arsenal and Liverpool have started the season with 2 wins from 2. And obviously Spurs have also started with 2 wins from 2. And then Manchester City fell to that defeat to Spurs last weekend. So I think they've got to bounce back. If they don't bounce back, that gap is going to become increasingly big, because Arsenal and Liverpool don't look like slowing up. And even Chelsea, who I said was an outsider, despite their poor result against Crystal Palace on the opening day, or obviously it's a draw as they would class it, they would probably have expected to win that game. I do think Manchester City have to bounce back in this game, and I just think with Brighton's slow start of the season, I think it might just continue. But I think they'll come back. They will. Brighton will have a surge in the season where they'll come back into the league and they will pick up win after win after win, because that's just what Brighton do. Once they get going, and once Hertula gets going, I think this team will start firing really well, and they'll obviously work their way back up the table. Manchester City to win this game and to try and close that gap to the pacemakers of the league at the moment. And as for Nottingham Forest and West Ham, West Ham again lost in the midweek. They lost to Wolverhampton Wanderers, as we mentioned, in the Carabao Cup. And Nottingham Forest, they obviously didn't go into they are in the draw now, for the third round, because they're obviously in European competition this season. I think if someone had have said, what's the worst that West Ham could have started, I think this has been 10 times worse than that. I didn't see it coming personally. I thought Graham Potter would just have enough in him to sort of steer the ship to safety again for this season, and then maybe West Ham could reevaluate and they could maybe have a look and see what other managers are out there if they did want to have a change. I think that decision may have to come sooner rather than later for West Ham if they do want to survive, because the football just doesn't look good enough. The players don't seem to be playing for Graham Potter. And it just seems to be going from bad to worse. As for Nottingham Forest, they're also in a bit of a predicament with the managerial situation. Nuno Espirito Santo seems to have shot himself in the foot. He come out and made a statement regarding the owner and I believe the sporting director as well. And then they come out and said that we've not been made aware of any issue from Nuno. And yeah, it just seemed a bit crazy. I've never seen that before from a manager to come out and to shoot himself in the foot about his own managerial position. And then obviously they got the draw against Crystal Palace, so they've started the season with 1 win, 1 draw, and I believe they're going to make it 2 wins, 1 draw in this game. I can't see anything other than a Nottingham Forest win. I know this is one of the games where probably West Ham will come out and they probably will win. It's just the way that the Premier League works, but I've never been so confident looking at all the games that I think that Nottingham Forest, in the style of play that they have, the quality of players they've got. I mean, even looking at some of the players they're bringing off the bench against Crystal Palace, James McAtee, Amari Hutchinson, these are some real good young players that they're bringing on and changing the game if they need them to. So yeah, I am going to go with the Nottingham Forest win. And like I say, I mean, I don't know how many more games Graham Potter's got in him, but I don't think it's going to be very many. They're already out the cup. They've already lost 2 league games. This will be the 3rd league game that they've lost. It's just not looking good for them. I mean, for West Ham to be sat at the bottom of the table, and even for the likes of Wolves and Brighton and Villa to be in and around that relegation zone, is surprising. The likes of Burnley, Leeds and Sunderland, as we mentioned, have all picked up 1 win at least this season in their home game. So they'll be looking to capitalise on that and make that gap even bigger. I mean, for West Ham, if they were sat on 0 points, if they do lose this game, and they're sat on 0 points from 3 games, and let's just say Leeds and Sunderland win their home games, and they move up to 6 points, that's a massive gap, even this early on in the season, to try and catch up to that gap. You're already setting yourself quite far behind. So it's a dangerous trap to get in for West Ham. They need to get out of it as soon as possible. I don't believe it's going to happen in this game. I believe it's going to be a Nottingham Forest win, and they'll move up to 7 points. Okay, and then we've got the 4:30 game this weekend. This one could be the biggest game of the weekend. Liverpool hosting Arsenal at Anfield. And as I say, these two teams have both started on 6 points. They both won 2 games from 2. So Liverpool beat Newcastle and they beat Bournemouth. Arsenal beat Leeds and they beat Manchester United. So 2 difficult games for each opponent. Seeing that this was the next game on the calendar for Arsenal, the most important thing for them is to not lose this game. So if they can go to Liverpool and they can hold out for a draw, that would be a fantastic result. And I think it would be one that would, to me, it would be telling for me, because I would look at that and I would go, they have the credentials to go on and win the league title. If they go there and they lose to Liverpool, it just sets in the same mentality that they've had for the last few seasons, where they would go to Manchester City or they'll go to Anfield or whoever it is, and they just can't get over the line in that away game. But they'll win the home game at the Emirates. So what they've got to do is they've got to change that mentality from losing the away game against the pacemaker, so for example Liverpool, and they've got to just say, we need to be conservative and we need to be controlled in the game, and we take a point. As for Liverpool, they look like they can score 4 or 5 goals every single game. I mean, they've already scored 3 goals away at Newcastle, and they scored 4 goals at home to Bournemouth. So they're on fire in terms of scoring goals, and the attack that they've got, we mentioned, Wirtz, Ekitike, Salah, Gakpo, Rio and Goma, who come off the bench and scored the winner. They've got a fantastic squad. They were without McAllister for the Newcastle game as well, so they were without Gravenberch for the first game, without McAllister for the second game. I'm assuming that both of them are going to be back and in that midfield, so that'll bring control for Liverpool. I am going to go with the Liverpool win. I just think it's difficult to see Arsenal trying to contain that attack. I think there's going to be opportunities as well for Arsenal to score a couple of goals against Liverpool, and I think if they can get Gyökeres into that system to try and beat the Liverpool high line, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for Arsenal to get a couple of goals. Liverpool just look at the back, especially against Newcastle and even against Bournemouth, they just look a little bit vulnerable, and like I say, that could be because one of Gravenberch and McAllister, they weren't playing together, and that might have a big difference. I thought that they would be both in against Newcastle and would be able to get a better idea of how Liverpool was going to be setting up. Obviously they still don't have Jeremy Frimpong, so Connor Bradley come on and had the final 10 minutes against Newcastle, so he may be in and ready to start. I don't think it will. I don't think 10 minutes is enough for match fitness to go in and have your first start. So yeah, who goes in at right back, I'm not too sure, but I'm going with the Liverpool win, and it'll be 3 wins from 3 for Liverpool. Okay, then we're on the final game. Apologies, this preview seems to be a little bit longer than the other ones I've done. The final game is Aston Villa hosting Crystal Palace at Villa Park, and this is an interesting game because Crystal Palace have come away with 2 points from the first 2 games, so they are unbeaten, and Aston Villa have come away with 1 point from 2 games, and they haven't actually scored a goal this season. So they drew 0-0 at home at Newcastle, and they drew they got beat 1-0 away at Brentford, which was last weekend. As for this game, Crystal Palace actually beat Aston Villa last year in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. That was the result that took them through to the final, where they played Manchester City, and they ended up winning that competition. So Crystal Palace have a good record recently against Aston Villa, and I'm not too sure what's happening at Aston Villa, to be honest. I was looking at their squad, and especially the signing of Evan Gesson, and I thought that they'd really strengthened the attacking department. They have a very comfortable midfield. I wouldn't like to go up against that midfield, any weekend. It can turn it on, and Tielemans, Kamara, Onana, McGinn are all solid players. And even the defence, the back line is really good as well. They had Emiliano Martinez back in against Brentford. He missed the opening game against Newcastle. Marco Bizzo had the man of the match performance against Newcastle in the opening game. So Martinez obviously then come back in, and I'm assuming he'll be back in for this game as well. I'm just looking at the likes of Crystal Palace attackers, and I'm looking at obviously Jean-Philippe Mateta. I'm looking at Ismail Assar, Justin Devaney, Adam Wharton. They have a real good team. Daniel Munoz on the right flank as well, linking up with Ismail Assar. So I'm going to go with a draw in this one again. I'm very tempted to go with a Crystal Palace win as well, because I don't know that I can say Aston Villa scoring. I'm very surprised by Unai Emery's approach to the season. It's not necessarily his fault, by the way, but I'm just surprised that they haven't done enough to even score a goal in the first 2 games. So in fact, I am going to change it up, and I am going to go for a Crystal Palace win. I just don't know if I can see Aston Villa scoring at the moment until they get it sorted, and figure out how to attack, or who's going to come in and make that difference. Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins just can't seem to work together at the moment to get that goal. They did come very close against Brentford, and they come very close against Newcastle. It's just that final cutting edge pass or shot, or how to, whatever it is that they need to do, they just can't seem to get it over the line. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Crystal Palace win on the final game. Now that's 7 o'clock on the Sunday night. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see Aston Villa doing well. I had them doing really well at the start of the season. I thought they would maybe be pushing up into the top 6 or 5 places of the league. After last season, they just narrowly missed out. and they haven't really lost anyone this summer. They've not brought anyone in. They brought Evan Gisson in, Marco Bizzo, Yasin Oskan. It's really only Evan Gisson who are probably getting the starting 11 for Villa, but even he has struggled to make a break into that team. So, but the main important thing was not losing anyone. They've not lost Watkins, they've not lost Rogers. They've kept a hold of their midfield, Onana, Kamara. So I'm just very disappointed by Aston Villa. I think they can be doing a lot better. I'm going to go with the Crystal Palace win. Okay, so there we have it. That is the preview for match week 3 done. Like I say, we will be having a break after this one because the international games will be coming up. I don't think I'm going to go into too much about the England. I'll say obviously who they're playing. It is the World Cup qualifier, so I might come on and do a little bit of a review after both of the games have been played, and we'll just go through who played, who had a big impact maybe. But I will be obviously focusing a little bit more content on the Formula 1, which is starting this weekend, so it's starting on Friday, and obviously the race will be on the Sunday, so I'll try and get the preview out after that. I will also be doing a review of the weekend's fixtures as well, so we'll go through what I got right and what I got wrong. Obviously I am recording this on the Thursday morning, and the Champions League fixtures are coming out tonight as well, so I might do a little thing on the TikTok. I don't know if I'll make a full video out of it, but we might do just a little predictor on the TikTok and see what we think of the fixtures and who got who, mainly just the English teams, and seeing who I think is most likely to go through out of all of the English teams as well. So if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button and hit the subscribe button, and until the next one, I'll catch you later.